Ian Heinisch versus Brendan Allen takes place this weekend on the main card of UFC Fight Night Vegas 13, Santos versus Teixeira, and I can't wait for this middleweight matchup. You've got Ian the Hurricane Heinisch, ranked middleweight contender. If he gets a big win against Brendan Allen, he's going to be looking to jump straight up those rankings against a guy that's going to get him towards that title shot that he wants so bad this late in his career as well, because Ian Heinisch is no young guy. So if he wins against Allen, he's going to be in a great position to jump straight up those rankings and see how he does against the top guys. And then you've got Brendan Allen, another dangerous contender, but outside of the rankings, undefeated in the UFC so far. Big wins in his career over Tom Breeze in the first round by TKO, Kevin Holland by rear naked choke in the second round, beat Kevin Holland. Kevin Holland's a huge name right now, and Brendan Allen has a good win against him, but still, Kyle Dalkaus in his last performance by unanimous decision. It was a very close fight though, back and forth in some moments, and Dalkaus took that fight on short notice. Who will reign supreme and earn their spot in that ranking of the middleweight division and then move themselves forward? Because if Brendan Allen wins, we're all in on Brendan Allen. And the UFC is going to be all in on Brendan Allen, because as soon as they see a guy who's young, they're going to chuck him straight to the top of that middleweight division. You saw what they did with Edmund Shavazian. So it's all on the line for Brendan Allen tonight. But if he loses, he can still come back. He's a younger guy. I'm sure he can gather himself and try and get back in there and improve himself. And I do believe, in my opinion, I know a lot of people disagree with this, Ian Heinisch is going to go out there and beat Brendan Allen. I said by maybe TKO. I don't actually see that happening. I think he's probably going to go out there and win this fight by a close competitive decision, 29-28. I don't see him finishing Brendan Allen, because as much as I don't think Brendan Allen's going to win this fight, I do admit that Brendan Allen has a ridiculously large head and he takes shots very well on the chin, and he's very hard to finish in fights, and I don't think he's been finished in his entire career so far. He might have been, but he lost to Hernandez by decision, Eric Anders by decision, but all the way back at the start of his career, lost to Trevin Giles by rear naked choke, but he's way improved since the Trevin Giles fight. Now he's losing to Hernandez, Anders, but then he got into the UFC, went back on a streak at LFA, and just has been looking good recently against Kevin Holland though. And I do want to dissect some of Brendan Allen's wins, because I do like the wins. But it's all about how those wins went. Because Kyle Dalkaus fight, don't get me wrong, I said Kyle Dalkaus, if he had a full training camp in that fight, would probably beat Brendan Allen. Dalkaus is a savage, and I'm looking forward to seeing him make his comeback against Dustin Stoltzfus. I believe he's taking on, but still, in that fight, man, if you're Brendan Allen and you're going to be looking to beat ranked contenders, beat Dalkaus on 9 days' notice, a little bit clearer. He took a lot of damage in that fight as well. Cuts all over his face, a swollen eye. Now he's turning around 5 months later against Ian Heinisch. It's enough time, but both guys are turning around reasonably quickly. But Ian Heinisch is turning around after taking no damage whatsoever against Gerald Meerschaert and annihilating him in the first round. And I believe that Ian Heinisch is definitely going to beat him, in my opinion. I just don't see Brendan Allen being able to choke out or finish Ian Heinisch on the ground in any fashion whatsoever. Ian Heinisch is a beast at grappling, okay? I've seen his fights. I just watched his fight again before starting this video, among some Brendan Allen fights as well, by the way, against Eric Anders. Eric Anders was able to stay out of those submission positions. Brendan Allen had him in a tough guillotine at one point in that fight and some other crazy submission positions. Anders was able to escape. You know, Anthony Hernandez was able to escape those positions. A lot of guys have been able to escape the positions of Brendan Allen, and I feel like Ian Heinisch in his fight with Antonio Carlos Jr. proved that he's at the level to escape submissions against a savage Antonio Carlos Jr. People don't understand how good Shoeface is. Okay, won the Ultimate Fighter in Brazil, I believe it was. Tough Brazil, I'm pretty sure, is the Ultimate Fighter that he won. Antonio Carlos Jr., dangerous guy in the middleweight division. Before losing to Ian Heinisch, he was on a 4-5 fight win streak, including names like Marvin Vettori, choked out Eric Spicely, choked out Jack Marshman in the first round, choked out Tim Boach in the first round, who's a tricky veteran, so it's obviously going to be difficult to get to. Antonio Carlos Jr. is a beast at jiu-jitsu. Black belt, and a real black belt that competes as a black belt as well. A lot of guys get their black belts. They've never been in a competition in jiu-jitsu in their life, but Antonio Carlos Jr. is a real black belt, and he had Ian Heinisch in some very bad positions in that first round. Won the first round very clearly, in my opinion. Took his back, rolled him over, got into mount, waited for Ian Heinisch to make a mistake, but Heinisch stayed patient, knew that he just had to get out of these positions and he'd be back on his feet. And after the first round, Heinisch started to come back, defend the takedowns, reverse the takedowns, get on top of Antonio Carlos Jr. and land real damage while Carlos Jr. was going for submission positions. And it reminded me of a fight between Brendan Allen and Kevin Holland, where Kevin Holland was winning that fight very clearly. And I'll go to the stats right now. Kevin Holland versus Brendan Allen. Holland was up 22-10 on strikes, and he was even up on total strikes as well. But still, I'm burping because of how excited I am. 14-2 on strikes in the first round for Kevin Holland. Brendan Allen was going for a leg lock. He was going for submissions. And Kevin Holland just stayed patient, was not in any submission danger whatsoever, and was landing big shots on Brendan Allen. And we saw that happen in the Dalkaus fight as well. And I think if you can let those guys on top of you to land those kind of shots, Ian Heinisch has got some dangerous ground and pound. And I feel like Brendan Allen's game plan in this fight should be to try and keep it standing, but I don't even see him going out there and destroying Ian Heinisch on the feet, because I know that Brendan Allen, in my opinion, is going to have a striking advantage here. I just don't see him with that level of an advantage to completely neutralize Ian Heinisch on the feet and win himself the fight. I think Ian Heinisch is too gritty. He's too dangerous. He uses the clinch well. He comes forward. He puts pressure on. Even in his fight with Derek Brunson, I know a lot of people look at that fight, and I even looked at that fight afterwards and thought, oh my God, you lost to Derek Brunson? You're complete trash. That's what that means. But Derek Brunson recently, with his yellow hair, has been on a roll at middleweight and has been destroying guys. I say destroying guys, but he beat up Edmund Shabazian really badly, finished him in the third round. Ian Heinisch looked much better than Edmund Shabazian, rocked Derek Brunson in the first round with a head kick and didn't even get destroyed after that, but did lose the fight by unanimous decision. But still, Derek Brunson is no slouch in that division, and he really hasn't reinvented himself, and it kind of makes Ian Heinisch's loss a little bit more acceptable, because I feel like he's learned a lot. Went into the fight with Omari Akhmedov, though, looked good there, but Omari Akhmedov is a beast, and back then, 2019, I know he had the fight with Weidman. I knew Weidman was going to beat Akhmedov. I just feel like you need to be a good grappler to beat Akhmedov, because he completely gasses out in grappling situations. But Ian Heinisch looked good against Akhmedov, had a really close fight with him, actually, a really, really close fight with Omari Akhmedov. I'm not going to count out Ian the Hurricane Heinisch in this fight against Brendan Allen. I think he's going to shut down the takedowns. Allen will shoot for takedowns. I think his only advantage is stand-up, but I know Brendan Allen's going to go for submission positions because he goes for them every single fight. I mean, you can look through the stats of Brendan Allen recently. He's got submission attempts in nearly all of his fights so far. I know they didn't count any submission attempts against Kyle Dalkaus, but I don't know how they didn't count any submission attempts in the fight with Kyle Dalkaus. I know he destroyed Tom Breeze in the first round, but he definitely had submission attempts against Kyle Dalkaus. Am I going crazy right now? How do they not count anything that he did? Whatever. All good. Brendan Allen is a very dangerous guy on the ground. I just don't think in the fights that he's shown so far where guys are able to escape certain positions, and even in the Kevin Holland fight, Holland was winning that fight, had a rear naked choking on Brendan Allen, was landing good shots on the ground and pound, came out in the second round, lost position quite badly and gave up his neck, trying to get back to his feet, and Brendan Allen just sunk in the rear naked choke. Allen is dangerous, and if you show him the opportunity, he will pounce on it. I just think with his submission game that he goes for when he's going for the leg and he's off of his back and he's trying to do all this stuff on the ground, I think Ian Heinisch is going to be way too patient, way too controlled like he was against Antonio Carlos Jr. If you haven't watched that fight, by the way, go back and watch it again. Antonio Carlos Jr. had his back multiple times in the first round, and Heinisch was cartwheeling out of those positions just to get himself back to safety. I mean, he has got great jiu-jitsu defense and great takedown defense as well. He's got the power advantage on the feet, in my opinion, because Brendan Allen, as much as he's shown good stuff, Tom Breeze kind of shit himself in that performance. Tom Breeze has anxiety issues and was talking about it leading up to that fight, and maybe, even though I picked Brendan Allen to TKO him in the first round, we should have expected Tom Breeze to shell up a little bit after a long layoff, but still, Brendan Allen's good, but I just haven't seen him tune up people on the feet, and I think that's his only advantage in this. Like, he's got to try and make the stand-up work, because the grappling's not going to work against Heinisch, in my opinion. If you can't submit Anthony Fluffy Hernandez and Eric Anders, you're not going to be able to do it to Ian Heinisch. If you can't submit Kyle Dalkaus on 9 days' notice, I don't think you're going to do it to Ian Heinisch. You survive with a competing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt in shoe-face Antonio Carlos Jr. I just don't like the matchup for Brendan Allen. At first, when I saw this fight, I was like, oh, we'll see. And then I started watching their fights, I really don't like this for Brendan Allen. You look at some of the stats that they have in comparison as well between them. I'll just try and find it right now. Striking accuracy is for Brendan Allen. He's pretty good on the feet. He doesn't have too much power. Ian Heinisch fights at a much higher pace as well. And we've seen in Brendan Allen's fights that he does slow down a little bit as the fight goes on. It should not be that difficult in the third and late second round against Kyle Dalkaus, who took it on 9 days' notice. I like Brendan Allen, but he has slowed down in a lot of his fights that we've seen so far, that he gets into that third round. And I think Ian Heinisch slows down in that third round. And if I was looking for a guy to beat Ian Heinisch, you've got to be able to push the pace late in the fight and make him pay on the feet and make him shoot sloppy takedowns. In my opinion, that's the best way to beat Ian Heinisch. I just don't see a way that Brendan Allen's going to get it done. He's got good stand-up, but I mean, Ian Heinisch's takedown defense is really good. 62% takedown defense. And that's against great grapplers in the middleweight division, including Omari Akhmedov, Derek Brunson, and Antonio Carlos Jr., 3 in a row in his performances. I think he's going to go out there and put a beating on Brendan Allen on the ground and take it back by 30-27, unanimous decision victory. Don't get me wrong, I'm sure Brendan Allen will have some close leg lock attempts on the ground. I just don't see Antonio Carlos Jr. I don't see Ian Heinisch, who defended against Antonio Carlos Jr., being submitted by Brendan All-In Allen. I think is a bad matchup. If Brendan Allen was taking on maybe an Omari Akhmedov, wouldn't mind that fight. That's a pretty close one. Maybe Omari Akhmedov would gas out in the grappling exchanges. We just haven't seen that from Heinisch yet. He's not coming off any damage against Gerald Meerschaert. I know they had to pull out of the first fight, but now they've rebooked it. Ian Heinisch was looking to immediately turn around a couple of weeks afterwards, which just shows you where his mindset is. He's in his prime. He's fought better competition. And he's just way stronger, in my opinion. I think that's going to be a huge advantage as well. Big guy. I know Brendan Allen has the reach and the size against Ian Heinisch, but Heinisch is a strong man for that division. I think he'll easily shake off Brendan Allen in the submission positions. And I just see this fight in my head with Brendan Allen on his back, looking to do something, and Heinisch landing brutal elbows on top, cutting open Brendan Allen, because a lot of guys have been able to do that. And if Kyle Dalkaus can have any moments of success in the grappling on 9 days' notice at the start of the quarantine era, where guys were not really in a good position to step in on short notice, now the things have kind of adjusted themselves. Guys can step up on short notice and do a little bit better because the gyms are open in some areas again and people have adjusted their training. But back at the start, that shouldn't be happening. And it's left a sour taste in my mouth. And I'm going to go with Ian Heinisch by unanimous decision. And if he does win this one, I want to see him take on maybe a guy in Uriah Hall. Maybe he calls out Uriah Hall, because as much as I like Uriah Hall, by the way, I don't like Uriah Hall, so I don't know why I said that. But still, Uriah Hall is a dangerous man in that division, but he has not... That performance against Anderson Silva, in my opinion, does not get him a top 5 opponent. So if Ian Heinisch does, in fact, win this one, I'll just check the rankings right now, by the way, of the middleweight division. If Ian Heinisch does win this one, I think he's at number 13 off the top of my head right now, if I had to take a wild guess. Oh, he's 15. How? He beat Antonio Carlos Jr., who beat Marvin Vettori. Okay, cool. They're just sliding him down. He's at number 15, so maybe not Uriah Hall then. Fuck off, man. Alright, if Ian Heinisch wins against Brendan Allen, maybe Jacare Souza wins against Marvin Vettori, and we can do a Jacare Souza versus Ian Heinisch. I think Vettori's going to beat Jacare Souza, but still, there's a bunch of guys. Maybe an Omari Akhmedov versus Ian Heinisch rematch. It might be a little bit soon for that, but bear with me a little bit here. Maybe Chris Weidman watches the Derek Brunson fight with Ian Heinisch and likes his chances in that matchup, because I don't know who Chris Weidman's going to take on right now, other than maybe a rematch with Uriah Hall. There's a bunch of guys, but what will be said is it's a great position on the card. In my opinion, this is as good as the main and co-main. I'm really looking forward to this one. Maybe not as the main, but the co-main event is kind of interchangeable with this one. I like Andre Arlovski versus Tanner Boser, but they clearly got the co-main event because Andre Arlovski's such a big and recognized name. Ian Heinisch versus Brendan Allen is also a great co-main event that I wouldn't mind seeing. And if they do get the win here, and if Brendan Allen does get the win here, expect them to jump him straight towards, like, I don't even know, Yoel Romero if he wins. That's what they do with the middleweight division. But still, I'm all in on Ian Heinisch, 30-27, winning the grappling exchanges, unanimous decision. Like and subscribe, click that button up there, and goodbye. I believe he's also a bit of a juicy underdog as well, which I'm going to check right now, because that's a very important deal to me, to score these live dogs. And I'm pretty sure Ian Heinisch, despite being ranked above Brendan Allen and have beaten better opponents, is the underdog. No, they're dead evens pretty much. I've never seen odds like this, but still, they're dead evens. He was the underdog, and I got money on him as a bit more of an underdog, so sucks for you guys, I guess. Sorry. I should have made this video a bit earlier. I've got money on him as an underdog. Good shit. Like and subscribe. Click that button up there. Goodbye. Toodle pip.